This is the story of how a traditional British pastry became the ultimate symbol of a modern public relations collapse. What looked like a rushed social media post about jam and scones was actually a devastating metaphor for a brand running entirely on fumes. In the span of just 48 hours, an effortless, unscripted moment from the future King of England triggered a reactionary PR maneuver so transparent, it accidentally exposed the staggering commercial desperation of the Duchess of Sussex. This was not a marketing strategy. It was a psychological reveal. In this video, we are going to unpack exactly what transpired during those 48 hours. We will examine the subtle visual signals that turned a simple lifestyle post into a masterclass in moral contradiction. We will explore how the fierce, years-long crusade to protect her children's privacy was suddenly and quietly abandoned the moment a product needed to be sold. Most importantly, we will decode the silent surgical precision of the royal family's response and what this sequence of events means for an empire that seems to be rapidly losing its identity. To truly understand the gravity of this misstep, we have to look back at the golden era. There was a time not too long ago when the Duke and Duchess of Sussex held the world's attention. In the palm of their hands, they were the ultimate disruptors. When they walked away from the rigid, centuries-old machinery of the British monarchy, they did so with the promise of building a billion-dollar, ethically driven global powerhouse. They signed massive, unprecedented deals with Netflix and Spotify. They commanded millions for sit-down interviews. They were untouchable, operating from a sprawling estate in California, positioning themselves as humanitarians who had narrowly escaped a toxic institution. Their entire brand was built on the premise of absolute independence and the ironclad protection of their family's privacy. They did not need the palace. They were going to do it better, bigger, and on their own terms. But the reality of maintaining a billionaire-tier lifestyle without the institutional backing of the crown is a relentless, exhausting machine. Fast forward to the present, and the landscape looks radically different. The explosive revelations have lost their shock value. The victimhood narrative, once a potent currency, has suffered from severely diminishing returns. The Spotify deal dissolved quietly, and the pressure to produce tangible, commercially viable content has reached a boiling point. Enter American Riviera Orchard. This was supposed to be the grand pivot, a sophisticated, high-end lifestyle brand that would finally transition the Duchess from a royal exile into a self-made American tycoon. But a brand requires momentum, it requires authenticity, and above all, it requires a unique identity. The background pressure heading into the spring was immense. The initial rollout of the strawberry jam had come and gone, relying heavily on a dwindling circle of influencers to post photos of numbered jars. It generated headlines, but it lacked a cohesive cultural footprint. There was a desperate need for a secondary push, a moment that could organically capture the public's imagination. But true organic moments cannot be manufactured, and they certainly cannot be stolen. This brings us to the first major rupture. It started an ocean away entirely by accident. Prince William was undertaking a standard royal engagement in Cornwall. During a casual conversation, the Prince of Wales was asked to weigh in on the great British culinary conundrum, the Devonian way versus the Cornish way of eating a scone. Does the clotted cream go first, or does the jam? With effortless charm and a natural, relaxed demeanor, William navigated the joke. He laughed, he engaged with the locals, and he revealed that he followed his late grandmother's preferred method. It was a small, fleeting moment. But because of who he is and because of the quiet, unbothered confidence he projected, the clip immediately charmed the British public and dominated the news cycle. It was a perfect display of soft power. He was not selling anything. He was simply existing in his role, totally secure in his position. What happened next is where the story shifts from a light-hearted royal engagement into a deeply uncomfortable display of commercial mirroring. Within hours of Prince William's scone conversation going viral, a new post materialized from the Duchess's camp. Suddenly, the American Riviera Orchard aesthetic was centered entirely around baking warm scones and serving them with jam. The timing was so immediate, so surgically aligned with William's press cycle, that it bypassed standard marketing and ventured into the realm of a stalker-like obsession. The ethical collapse lies in the details. Viewers immediately noticed the jarring inconsistencies. The post was pushed out during the American Memorial Day weekend, a solemn holiday traditionally associated with barbecues and remembrance, not high tea and clotted cream. Furthermore, the recipe was inexplicably presented using United Kingdom measurements. Why would an American lifestyle brand operating out of California, targeting an American consumer base on an American holiday, suddenly adopt British culinary metrics for a traditional British pastry? The answer is as simple as it is devastating. She was not catering to her audience, she was responding to her brother in law. It was a staggering contradiction. Here was a woman who had publicly documented her disdain for the archaic traditions of the British monarchy, who had framed her departure as an escape from a culturally suffocating environment, now desperately clinging to the very aesthetics of that culture to sell fruit spread. The visual details were equally forced. The pristine white apron, the meticulously sterile kitchen that felt more like a movie set than a home, and the bizarrely poor audio quality of the accompanying clip. It was an illusion of domesticity, a hollow echo of the authentic charm Prince William had displayed just 2 days prior. When the scone stunt failed to dominate the news cycle in the way she had hoped, the strategy took a much darker, more permanent turn. This is the moment a fundamental line was crossed. For years, the cornerstone of the Sussex brand was the fierce, almost aggressive shielding of their children from the public eye. They sued agencies, they condemned the press, and they lectured the public on the sanctity of their children's privacy. But when the brand engagement stalled, that deeply held moral boundary simply evaporated. Suddenly, carefully curated briefings began appearing in friendly publications, specifically People magazine. The narrative shifted from the quality of the jam to the intimate details of the children's preferences. The public was suddenly informed that their son, now referred to by the newly minted, highly marketable nickname Arch, favored the raspberry spread while their daughter, rebranded as Lil, preferred the strawberry. It was a breathtaking reversal. The children whose privacy was once deemed a matter of life and death were now being utilized as human billboards. They were reduced to promotional tools deployed to artificially inject sentimental value into a failing product launch. This was the point of no return. You cannot spend years weaponizing your desire for privacy only to cheerfully violate it the moment you need to move inventory. The public, even those who had remained fiercely loyal, could see the strings being pulled. It signaled a profound internal panic. It showed a team that realized their only remaining currency was the very royal connection, and the very children they claimed they were trying to protect from the spotlight. And as this frantic, noisy scramble for relevance played out across American social media, the silence from the palace was deafening. There was no counter-briefing. There was no royal source expressing dismay. There was just Prince William days later caught on camera, wildly celebrating his beloved Aston Villa winning a football match. In a moment that quickly went viral, William is seen filming the joyous crowd on his phone. A call comes through threatening to interrupt his happiness. Without a second thought, without losing his smile, he simply swipes the call away and goes back to celebrating. He was entirely unbothered. He was living his life. And in that tiny, seemingly insignificant gesture of swiping away an unwanted distraction, the entire dynamic of this transatlantic war was crystallized. One side is exhaustingly plotting every move, desperately trying to hijack the narrative. The other side isn't even picking up the phone. But the fallout from this desperate maneuver was only just beginning, and the internal damage to the Sussex brand was about to become impossible to hide. The image of Prince William effortlessly swiping away a phone call while engulfed in genuine, unscripted joy is more than just a viral moment. It is a psychological mirror held up to the sprawling estate in Montecito, while the heir to the throne operates with the unbothered security of a man who knows exactly what his future holds. His estranged brother and sister-in-law find themselves trapped in a relentless, exhausting war room of their own making. When a public relations maneuver fails, as spectacularly as the scone stunt did, the damage rarely stays confined to the brand. It seeps into the marriage, it alters the family dynamic, and it forces a very dark realization about the future. To understand the shifting dynamic behind closed doors, we have to look at the changing role of Prince Harry within this commercial enterprise. The Duke of Sussex was once one of the most globally beloved figures of the modern era. He was the charismatic, rebellious, but fiercely loyal heart of the Windsor family. Today, his public utility has been noticeably downgraded. In the frantic rollout to save the failing jam launch, Harry was not positioned as a global leader or a humanitarian visionary. He was relegated to a marketing bullet point. The public was cheerfully informed that the Duke preferred the raspberry spread. This detail matters because it exposes a quiet, devastating shift in power and identity. Prince Harry walked away from his country and his family to protect his wife and secure a life of profound purpose. But the reality of their current ecosystem requires him to be a prop in a lifestyle brand's social media strategy. One has to wonder about the private conversations, the moments of reflection, when the camera is off. And the realization sets in that the freedom they fought so bitterly to achieve looks remarkably like a commercial prison. He traded the golden cage of the monarchy for the relentless, unforgiving wheel of American influencer culture, where relevance is measured not by duty but by engagement metrics. This internal tension is only amplified by the ideological whiplash surrounding their children. The sudden introduction of the highly informal nicknames Lil and Arch to market fruit preserves reveals a staggering level of strategic confusion. Just months prior, the couple made a highly publicized, aggressive push to ensure their children were officially recognized as prince and princess. They demanded the titles, claiming it was their birthright, signaling a deep, lingering attachment to the very institution they publicly condemned. They wanted the royal prestige, but when they realized royal prestige does not automatically translate to retail sales in America, they frantically pivoted. Suddenly, they tried to manufacture a relatable suburban aesthetic. The royal titles were shelved, and the children were rebranded as Lil and Arch. Everyday kids who just happen to love their mother's artisanal jam. You cannot be an oppressed exile demanding royal titles on Tuesday and a relatable, folksy lifestyle influencer selling jam with your kids' nicknames on Thursday. The public sees the friction. They see a brand that has absolutely no idea what it wants to be, pivoting wildly between aristocratic entitlement and commercial desperation. And when a brand loses its identity, the audience loses its trust. This brings us to the silent, devastating weapon that Buckingham Palace has perfected over the last 3 years, the grey rock method. In psychology, grey rocking is a technique used to deal with individuals who thrive on drama and conflict. You do not argue, you do not defend yourself, you offer absolutely nothing of emotional value. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a grey rock. By refusing to engage, the palace has starved the Sussex PR machine of its most vital fuel, a willing opponent. When Meghan launched her lifestyle brand right on the heels of the royal family's health crises, and when she attempted to hijack Prince William's press cycle with a hastily baked batch of scones, she was implicitly daring the palace to react. Any reaction would have validated her. It would have given her relevance. It would have created a two-sided narrative. Instead, she was met with total aristocratic indifference. The institution simply kept moving. William kept visiting charities and celebrating football matches. The king returned to his public duties. They did not brief against the jam. They did not complain about the timing. They simply acted as if the noise coming from California did not exist. And that is why this story resonates so deeply with millions of viewers around the world. We are not watching a debate over culinary traditions or fruit preserves. We are watching a modern morality play about the illusion of power and the ultimate price of pride. The Sussexes successfully convinced the world that they were the main characters in a grand historical drama. They believed that by removing themselves from the monarchy, they would cripple the institution and emerge as a new, more evolved kind of royalty. But the brutal truth that is currently unfolding is that the monarchy did not need them to survive. But they desperately needed the monarchy to remain relevant. Without the structure, the rules, and the built-in audience of the crown, they are just another celebrity couple trying to convince the internet to buy their products. The weaponization of their victimhood has lost its edge. The exploitation of their family estrangement has exhausted the public's empathy. And now, in a final act of commercial desperation, they have been forced to monetize the only two things they have left, the family they abandoned, and the children they swore to protect. What remains is a profound sense of isolation. When you burn every bridge to the past, and your vision for the future fails to materialize, you are left stranded in the present. The scone stunt was not a calculated masterstroke. It was a distress signal. It was the visual equivalent of a ship taking on water, frantically throwing anything it can find overboard to stay afloat. The tragedy is no longer about what the royal family did to them. The tragedy is what they are currently doing to themselves, locked in a cycle of diminishing returns, forever chasing the ghost of the relevance they left behind. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the deeper psychology behind these headlines. If you appreciate analysis that looks beyond the surface noise, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. We will continue to watch, analyze, and decode the stories that matter.